Hello and welcome to our brand new show, Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you the stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison Lagrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. Israel says it has completed the release of 90 Palestinian prisoners as part of the Gaza ceasefire deal that took effect a day earlier. An Iranian court sentences populist singer Amir Hossein Maghoushlu, known as Tatalu, to death after he was convicted for blasphemy. Tens of millions of residents along the U.S. East Coast brace for heavy snow as Weather Service issues winter storm warnings over Arctic blast. Bitcoin hits a record high above $190,000 as Trump, who has signaled plans to deregulate the cryptocurrency sector, takes oath shortly. And in India, a sessions court in Kolkata convicts Sanjay Roy to life in prison for the rape and murder of a doctor at the Jaishankar hospital. Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest from Washington, D.C., where in just hours from now, Donald Trump will be sworn in as the President of the United States for the second time. The stage is set for the grand event that the world has its eyes on. The ceremony will be held inside the United States Capitol Rotunda. It is the circular central space below the dome of the Capitol. Here, U.S. Chief Justice John Roberts will administer the 35-word oath of office. Trump will swear on a Bible before reciting the presidential oath. The inauguration was originally due to take place in front of the U.S. Capitol, but has been shifted indoors due to the Arctic storm hitting the United States, to a venue that was overrun 4 years ago by rioters seeking to overturn Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 election. Analysts say that today's inauguration of Donald Trump is a remarkable moment in American history. The Republican leader's comeback is being touted as one of the most extraordinary ones in global modern politics. He is only the second president in over 230 years of American democracies to have come to power, lost the re-election, and then returned to the Oval Office. The other leader to have served non-consecutive presidential terms was Grover Cleveland, the 22nd and 24th U.S. president in the 1880s and the 1890s. Now, once sworn in, Trump will then deliver his inaugural address, where he will outline his priorities for the coming term. He is expected to deliver on key promises he made during his campaign. Donald Trump may also bring up his first-day executive orders. He is expected to sign a historic number of these orders on day one in office. Let's take a look at some of them. First, a mass deportation plan targeting undocumented migrants. Donald Trump has promised to launch the largest deportation plan in American history. Second, pardoning Capitol Hill rioters. Trump has promised to pardon defendants convicted for their role in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Third, ending birthright citizenship. This is a right granted to anyone born in the United States under the 14th Amendment. Fourth, ending the Russia-Ukraine war. In terms of foreign policy, Donald Trump has promised to end the Ukraine war within 24 hours of taking office. Fifth is implementation of tariffs. Trump has promised to slap tariffs on products imported from Mexico and Canada, two of America's biggest trading partners. Trump lists also extends to ending Joe Biden's electric vehicle mandate, increasing oil drilling in the United States, banning transgender athletes from women's sports, ending gender-affirming care practices, and a fresh push to the American auto industry. Let's take a look at who's attending this grand event in Washington, D.C. Now, the inauguration is expected to bring together all living former U.S. presidents, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton. World leaders attending the ceremony include Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban, Argentina's President Javier Milei, Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa, and Paraguay President Santiago Peña. From India, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will attend the ceremony. Chinese President Xi Jinping was also invited, but Vice President Han Zheng will represent the country. From the United Kingdom, far-right politician Nigel Farage will be at the ceremony. Now, those not invited for Trump's inauguration ceremony include the UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Now, these two leaders were recently criticized by Elon Musk, and Elon Musk will be leading Trump's Department of Government Efficiency. French President Emmanuel Macron has also not been invited. Now coming to business tycoons and tech CEOs who will be present for the ceremony: Tesla and ex-CEO Elon Musk, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, and Apple CEO Tim Cook, the CEO of Google Sundar Pichai, TikTok CEO Shouzi Chu, the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, Reliance Industries Chairman Mukesh Ambani, and Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi. Now, those who have declined the invitation include the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the former First Lady Michelle Obama. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who is set to step down after losing support back home, will also not be attending. Donald Trump's family will be central to the event. His wife and his 5 children, along with his grandchildren, will be present. Due to the freezing temperatures in the capital, a planned parade down the Pennsylvania Avenue with military regiments, school bands, and floats and citizen groups has been cancelled. The parade will now take place at the 20,000-seat Capital One Arena in downtown Washington. With an estimated 250,000 ticketed guests, security has been tightened across Washington, D.C., including 25,000 law enforcement and military personnel, 7,800 National Guard troops, and 4,000 officers from across the country. Thousands of protesters are also expected to gather around the Capitol to oppose Trump's policies, which they say will undermine women's rights, the rights of immigrants, LGBTQ+ community, and racial and religious minorities. Once the ceremony and the gala dinner finish, Trump has vowed to get down to work on day one. The decisions he takes during his second term in office will not just impact America's political discourse, but also the world's, at a time when wars and economic uncertainties loom. Now, for more on this, we have with us Michael Leon. He is the host of a news commentary podcast named Can We Please Talk? And he is joining us live from Miami. Welcome to Firstpost.
Allison, thanks for having me.
Now, what does this list of those attending, those uninvited, and those declining to attend the event say about Trump's and America's future dynamics with world leaders?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting what you just ran through there in terms of some of the world leaders that will be attending, some that won't. For people that don't live here in the U.S., obviously there's been a huge snowstorm that has come through the Northeast. So that is why a lot of this got moved inside and indoors because of the freezing cold temperatures that are taking place right now in Washington, D.C. Your graphic just kind of showed there a little bit of the snow outside. So it wasn't really for security reasons. It was a lot to do with the weather and the impact that would have on it. But what do I make of everything that's happening right now in terms of what Donald Trump is pledging to do in these first 100 days, even in these first 24 hours of executive action is going to be very interesting to watch because some of the world leaders that are shown here on the screen are folks that are very aligned with what the MAGA movement has brought to the United States. And they're very aligned with that. So I'm not shocked that, Giorgia Meloni, for example, or Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, are attending this. But as you noted before, Emmanuel Macron and Justin Trudeau, some other leaders that are, left-leaning in terms of their countries are not attending this event. And I don't make anything of those invites because, with the weather, with the way this was all kind of upended over the last couple of weeks, I think that there was some issues with different travel schedules and things like that. So I don't make too much of it, but whether or not they work together and what Donald Trump decides to do with respect to the U.S. on a foreign stage is what I'm more interested in learning about, because he already has some issues here at home working with the Democratic Party.
Right, and Michael, given the list of executive orders that you mentioned that Trump is likely to sign, how might they align with his previous policies, and what immediate domestic or global consequences could they trigger?
Yeah, so the executive orders is going to be interesting to watch as well, because he's pledged to sign over 200, at least in this first week. Right now, executive actions, for example, don't supersede law, but there is, some wiggle room with respect to how executive orders are implemented. I think the biggest ones to watch, first and foremost, are what he addresses at the U.S. southern border. Under President Biden, there has been encounters that have been decreased because of executive actions that the president has taken in terms of the amount of folks that are seen on a daily basis at the U.S. southern border. So that has helped with the stem, but I'd be interested to see what he does there in terms of legislation. I know that you posted earlier a bunch of the executive orders, and some of them, how would they be implemented? For example, the Russia-Ukraine war, right? The president has pledged to end that in 24 hours. That's just not possible. I don't know how you bring both sides to the negotiating table right now with executive action. Do you bring it with diplomacy, of course, but not with executive order and action? And then there's, some of the tariff stuff that has gone back and forth between the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, and obviously Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump, and how that would impact just here the North American trade that we do with Canada and Mexico. There's something there that the president was pointing to with his True Social post recently about that. Everyone's very interested to see how that would work, because we get a lot of manufacturing goods from Canada with respect to lumber. We get a lot of our auto parts from Mexico. So that is going to affect a lot of different industries. And that's going to be something that I think a lot of people are going to be interested to watch as well.
And while we've seen the political leaders remain divided on attending or skipping the event, big tycoons and tech titans are clearly not. How do you view this?
Not great. I think it's very dances that line of, impropriety to have people that work in such big industries like tech, which influence user behavior with respect to some of these social media apps. And we see what's playing out here with TikTok. And I think the president is going to issue an executive order to give a 90-day stay here to ByteDance to sell to a US-based company. But a lot of these big CEOs are billionaires, and a lot of their companies not only create jobs, obviously, for US and foreign workers, but they also influence our discourse. They influence user behavior, like I mentioned, in terms of what consumers shop and buy, for everything from an iPhone to posting a story on Instagram and what you get fed algorithmically through the feed. So I'm not crazy about the way big tech has embraced Donald Trump, or at least has remove some of the guardrails that could at least, allow or disallow for the spread of misinformation on social media. I don't think that that's helpful with respect to U.S. discourse. That's why I started my show, to do something about that. And I'm not crazy about the way this is starting to shape up with how Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos have all kind of catered up to the incoming administration, because I would have liked to be done in different ways in terms of job creation here in the U.S. So we're going to see if that is what's at play, but I don't think that's what's at play.
Right. Michael, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost and for your valued insights and analysis.
Thanks for having me, Alison.
Now over to updates from the Russia-Ukraine war, which is close to entering its fourth year. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky claims that Russia has launched more than 1,000 air attacks in just 1 week. He claims Moscow's forces launched more than 660 glide bombs, around 550 drones, and over 60 missiles in 1 week. Ukraine's air defenses downed 33 missiles and over 300 drones. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky also made a renewed appeal to his allies to arm Ukraine forces with more US-made Patriot air defense systems, stating that Russian attacks caused multiple deaths and injuries. Over the weekend, Russian forces unleashed a combined missile and drone strike of the Ukrainian capital Kiev, killing at least 3 people. Explosions boomed across the sky as air defenses repelled the attack. Russia also launched a barrage of missiles in Zaporizhia, leaving at least 10 injured. A cathedral and an industrial facility were also destroyed in the city. Earlier today, Russia said it had shot down 31 Ukrainian drones, which mainly targeted industrial sites in Tatarstan, about 1,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Moscow also said that 14 drones were neutralized in the border region of Bryansk. Local authorities said that Kiev had also fired 4 HIMARS missiles. A series of attacks in recent months have intensified the long bombing campaign by Russia and Ukraine, and they come at a precarious moment of the war. Both Kiev and Moscow have been trying to secure an upper hand in the war as Donald Trump returns to the White House. Trump has pledged to bring a quick end to the fighting. While Trump promised to strike a peace deal on his first day at the White House, he has not yet revealed the details of this plan. Now, Trump's team has already said that both sides will have to make concessions in order to reach the peace deal. However, Moscow has already rejected the idea, saying it might not be willing to concede any occupied territory to Ukraine. So, can Donald Trump stop the Ukraine war from entering its 4th year? After his inauguration and the celebrations, all eyes will be on the American president's biggest foreign policy promise. And moving to Iran, where over the weekend 2 Supreme Court judges, infamous for delivering controversial judgments against the opponents of the Iranian government, were shot dead. Justices Mohammad Moghezi and Ali Razini were killed after a gunman shot at them inside a Tehran courtroom on the 18th of January. Now, a bodyguard of one of the justices was also injured in the attack. According to the state media, the attacker killed himself while fleeing the scene of what they called a premeditated assassination. According to reports, a 3rd judge was also a target, but the assailant was unable to find him in the court. Now, the state media said that the attacker was a 31-year-old janitor who worked at Iran's Palace of Justice building that also houses the Supreme Court premises. The 2 judges were veterans of Iranian judiciary who had for decades headed courts involved in trying protesters and activists. And infamously, Ali Razini served as a judge in one of Iran's death commissions. In 1988, the then Iranian supreme leader issued a decree to order the execution of imprisoned opponents. An unspecified number of 3-member judicial commissions were formed across Iran to prosecute political prisoners. The judicial commissions were often reported as death commissions for the sheer number of death sentences ordered by them. By the end of 1988, some 30,000 political prisoners were executed in Iran. Since 2016, the names of 100 Death Commission members have been revealed. Many still continue to hold senior positions in the Iranian judiciary or government. Now, meanwhile, the judge, Mohammad Moghezi, had also had his share of controversial judgments against Iranian dissidents, including filmmakers and poets. Judge Mohammad Moghezi had headed a court that handled the case related to female dress code violations. He also served as a prosecutor in Iran's notorious Evin prison. Moghezi was sanctioned by the United States in 2019 for overseeing countless unfair trials. And according to the United States, Moghezi had been notorious for sentencing scores of journalists and internet users for lengthy prison terms. Moghezi also had pressed questionable charges against members of Iran's Baha'i religious community. So far, not much has come out about what motivated the attacker to kill these judges. But the state media has suggested an Israeli link in the killings. The state media underlined that Iranian judiciary's recent measures to prosecute alleged Israeli agents may have had a role to play in the killings. Meanwhile, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei led the funeral prayers of the killed judges yesterday. The Iranian supreme leader hailed the murdered judges as martyrs and said that the two of them did great deeds throughout their lives, which in fact made them deserving of martyrdom. The targeted killing...
They were rewarded with their martyrdom in the way of God at the hands of God's enemies. Those who die as martyrs actually receive a reward from God.
The targeted killing of two Supreme Court judges in Iran is unprecedented in many ways, but it has once again thrown the spotlight on the overall disrepute of the Iranian judiciary. Iran's judiciary continues to be seen as an ally of the country's hardline Islamist regime, both theologically and constitutionally, with a long history of sham trials triggered by hardline fatwas. The concern over the security of judges continues to be overshadowed by their lack of credibility. And for our last story, we go back to Europe, where an international legal showdown is set to begin over an unusual subject of interest, the silvery fish species called sand eel. Now, the humble sand eel is set to be in the spotlight during what looks like the first courtroom trade battle between the United Kingdom and the European Union since Brexit. The UK has banned European vessels from catching the sand eel in its North Sea waters to protect marine wildlife that depend on it for food. But the European Union is now challenging the move. The UK imposed complete ban on sand eel fishing in April of 2024, citing marine conservation reasons. Brussels said that London's ban breaches post-Brexit deal in force since April of 2021. The EU also claims that the ban violates the fishing rights of the Danish fishermen under the 2021 UK-EU deal. The EU wants Danish fishermen to be allowed to fish sand eel under the 2021 EU-UK trade deal. The formal talks to resolve the row have failed, and now the dispute is headed for a 3-day trade tribunal hearing in The Hague's Permanent Court of Arbitration. If there is no last-minute compromise between the two sides, this will mark the first legal wrangle between the UK and the EU after Brexit. The dispute comes as the UK prepares for negotiations with the EU over the new commercial fishing limits from June next year. This is when provisions related to the EU's access to the UK fisheries will expire. Now, what exactly are the sand eel fish, and why are the UK government banning the catchments of this fish? Now, sand eel are a group of small eel-like fish species. It is a jointly managed fish stock under the UK-EU trade deal. Sand eel are rarely caught for human consumption. They are a favorite food of other fish species like cod and haddock, as well as threatened seabirds such as puffins and kittiwakes. They are also food for several critically endangered dolphins like porpoises. Now, across Europe, especially in the UK and France, marine conservation groups have long called for a ban on sand eel fishing to encourage seabird conservation, the protection of marine ecosystem, and the conservation of porpoises. Now, recognizing the marine conservation demands, in 2021, the UK imposed a licensing requirement on its own vessels to discourage sand eel fishing. In March last year, then UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's government banned all vessels from catching sand eel in the English waters. But the ban outraged the Danish fishermen, who sell sand eel to animal feed and fish oil industries under the post-Brexit deal. The Danish fishermen hold the right to the fish, the EU's share of the sand eel in the UK's water. Now, the dispute is not about whether the UK can restrict the fishermen from Denmark or the rest of the EU for conservation reasons, or whether the EU fishing rights remain unscathed under the 2021 post-Brexit trade deal. As the UK and the EU wrangle over fishing rights, the spotlight is once again on the haphazard way in which the UK exited the European Union. Several areas, such as fisheries and transport, resurface, remain a bone of contention between London and Brussels. The current dispute over fish catchments will be closely watched for how the UK's conservation stance stands against the EU's economic rights under the post-Brexit trade deal. And that's all we have with us on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.